basically me just sitting in my mom's kitchen, like playing as hard as I can, trying to make them a little different. And then they got split into other songs and Street Justice as well. You know, and
Yeah.
then you can play World Peace. These are the signs of the time. You know, it's like you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
play all this. Harley even joked at one point that we should call the album Cro-Mags in E.
All right. So you're out there in LA, is that correct? Or are you back home in New York now?
I'm in LA at the Sunset Marquis. This is my suite, or my office and my suite.
Okay. They got marshals and stuff out there in the hotel already, huh?
Well, yeah, I'm out here tracking, so
Oh, that's cool.
got to have my tools.
Yeah. All right. So you're not out there filming or anything, or are you doing both?
No, I never work in LA. I'm a New York local.
Okay.
In local 600, I'm East Coast local, but
Mhm.
so all my work is really in New York. I mean, from time to time I'll shoot in Canada or Atlanta, but generally I work in New York.
Yeah, I used,
Very rarely in LA.
okay.
The
I used,
union is set up; they don't want the pools mixing.
that makes sense, actually. Yeah, I never thought about that. I used to work at Hogs and Heifers down there in the meatpacking district. I saw you filming down there a few times. I was always like, "Come get a drink." You're like, "I'm working."
Yeah,
But okay.
Tom McNeil. Tom McNeil is a very old friend of mine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Is
He,
he still
he
around?
was the one. He was the one who originally opened Hogs and Heifers.
Right, with Alan Dell, I believe, right? I'm not sure, but
Yeah, he was his
yeah,
partner in the beginning.
yeah, yeah. Is Tommy still around, actually?
You know, sad to say, I don't know. We were really close for 2 decades, and then just disappeared from each other's lives. The funny thing, the last time we were really interacting was right before I got into the film business. We were talking about opening up not a Hogs and Hefter, a Village Idiot in Los Angeles,
Oh, wow.
and and I came out here and I scouted locations and I got the lay of the land for how liquor licenses worked out here, and
Mm,
then I went back to him and presented him the idea, and he was like, "Okay, great." And then he tried to like saddle me with a partner, and I said,
oh,
"Hey, man, I wanted to be partners with you, not with this person."
yeah,
So
yeah.
I was on the fence there at the time. I was like, either I'm going to invest in a bar or I'm going to buy a Steadicam, and I bought a Steadicam.
Probably a wise decision, I would say.
I would say so.
Yeah. So you said you're tracking. Are you working on a new Aggros record then?
Yeah.
Okay. In LA this time.
Well, I'm just doing some tracks here. I don't record in a traditional fashion where I rehearse a band and
Yeah.
go into the studio and record it in one session and like over the course of a month or so and then mix. I record one song at a time and
Mhm.
I track wherever I have availability, generally of an engineer or musicians. You know, like if there's a drummer or any or my piano player or just anybody who I want to play,
Yeah.
or I'm ready to record something and there's availability. Like with the first album, I recorded that record in 20 different rooms
Oh, okay.
and with a lot of different people, different engineers, and this album is different though because it's the same engineer on every song, Georgios Pesios, who's an amazing musician and ear and technician, and we've done a lot of great things together. But I haven't seen I haven't had any reason. We definitely went into this project saying we were going to do it together from beginning to end.
Uh, do you know? Can you tell me who else has played drums or anything else on it?
Cobbs plays drums on one song,
Hmm.
and my friend Darrow Sandler, and none of these guys are drummers of from other bands. I prefer not to really do that.
Hmm.
I'd prefer to find musicians that I know they're playing as opposed to their pedigree.
Yeah, I hear you. That's cool.
And I had written this one song, and it just required a kind of like I felt like it needed Stuart Copeland and Cobbs hates the police. He's like a incredible artist on the drums,
Mhm.
but he has like an amazing toolbox, but he just doesn't have that police tool in his toolbox. So,
Yeah.
but I thought of my friend Darrow, who I hadn't even seen in 25 years. We were in a band together. It was like me, Mark Piavanetti from Carnivore,
Mhm.
Chuck Lenahan who also played in Aggros on the first album, and he was the drummer, and he was like his drumming never left me. I
Mhm.
always thought about how he played. And when this song came up, I just reached, we were friends on Facebook. We hadn't spoken many years. So I just sent him a message. I'm like, hey man, I have a song that's perfect for you. Do you want to come play on it? And he just showed up with his drums and we spent 12 hours. He didn't really even know the song. Like we'd never played it together,
Mhm.
but we just walked through it part by part. And I got a great drum performance out of him,
Okay.
which I'm super happy with.
Yeah.
And like, there's two other drummers, Giuseppe Freelance and Vic Demal, played drums on a number of tracks.
Okay.
And these guys are guys you won't know from other
I was
bands.
about to say they don't sound familiar to me actually, but I'm
I did
sure
speak, I did speak to John from Tomahawk
they're.
about
Mhm.
one, but that probably depends on his availability. He's on tour constantly. I actually saw Tomahawk last night and the night before
Oh, okay.
at the
That's
Belasco.
cool.
They were great.
Yeah, nice. Where'd you see him?
The Belasco.
I don't know that one. Where is that?
It's an old theater in downtown LA
Hmm. Okay.
that a lot of these old theaters they go in and they spend a whole boatload of money renovating to make them look beautiful, like the King's Theater in New York.
Yeah.
um, but they didn't do that with the Belasco. It's just open and you could see the former grandeur of it, but it's still a beautiful room to go see a show in. And
Uh, that's
yeah,
cool. So what are you planning on doing with the album? Are you going to self-release it again, or are you gonna try to get it on a label or anything like that?
I don't know. I don't make plans like that.
Hmm.
I just focus on making the music, and I don't really see a reason to be on a label
Yeah.
anymore. It just seems like all they're going to do is upload it to streaming services. So like
Yeah.
anybody can do that. I
Yeah.
mean, there is the promotional wing of a record label, but I see no evidence of what they do besides social media. You can just
Right.
hire a social media company, but I don't pretend to know or pretend to be savvy. What I do see is that if you're not on a label, you won't get record reviews.
Hmm. Well, right. Yeah. If you don't have the PR, it's true. I know.
Even if you do have the PR, if a PR guy sends your material to magazines without a
Yeah.
label, they just won't review it because it's like all part of a machine. All the record labels and managers and the festivals and all that kind of stuff, they're all linked in booking agents, and
Yeah. I
it's
guess that's one of those kind of things that hasn't changed. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of an old school music business kind of thing. You know?
I don't think it's an old school music business thing. I think it's totally different now. I think the record labels lost control, and now they have control in a new way, which is live, live performance, labels taking merchandising and a cut of the concert, and so they play a big role in getting them out on bills because that's where they're making their money back because they're not making money selling,
Right.
manufacturing, distributing, and selling records. I think the record business has changed a lot, and it's almost better for them now because now they have even more control over the artists.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah.
that's not something I'm really interested in talking about, and I don't think the fans of the music give a rat's ass about that, and I certainly don't.
Well, yeah. I hear you.
I try to focus on just making the music. Once
Yeah.
the what once the record is done, um, then I'll figure out what to do with it.
That's cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice. Um, is it going to be instrumental still? You didn't find a singer, I don't think. Or I don't think you're even looking for a singer, right?
I'm not, and
Yeah.
I and the album is recorded with the same um, direction, which is to tell musical stories with
Uh,
the instruments that are available. I don't think of it as without a singer. I just think of it as songs that um, tell the story with the instruments and keep you engaged from beginning to end in the same way any song or any piece of music. And, instrumental music is not a unique concept. All classical music is instrumental, most jazz. And
Right.
I grew up listening to the Dixie Dregs and Brand X and Pat Metheny and bands like that. And so to me, it's just like the music that I grew up listening to.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah. Um, so going back, your father was a music business guy and like with a lot of country music, right? Like Johnny Paycheck and stuff like that.
Yeah, he called himself a music man.
Okay, well, music guy, music man. Okay, that's cool. At least I was close there.
He forged his way into the music business in a time when he was just flying by the seat of his pants, and he would do anything he could. Like when he was right out of the army, he became a concert promoter, but like not in the same sense that they have it now, where you engage a band. He would do jamborees, and he did a big country jamboree in Boston, which was considered kind of strange, to bring a country jamboree, because he had started in Wheeling, West Virginia,
Hmm.
booking people like Patsy Cline and things of and people of that nature, Hawkshaw Hawkins and Hank Williams,
Nice.
and then he got the idea of he wanted to do a big jamboree in Boston, to make it a little bit more metropolitan, oddly
Yeah,
enough. And it became the most popular jamboree in the country. And
nice.
because he was tied to that and all those artists, he had the ambition to get involved with signing artists and producing them. And then he actually started producing before he got involved in a label. He would do it, like I said, he would do anything he can. He would just like he was really a charming, charismatic, you know, Svengali type guy, and
Uh-huh.
talk anybody into anything. And like one example, I love the story, and of course, I never heard any of these stories from him because he just like I'd say most of my life I didn't even know what he did for a living because he just was my father. He
Yeah.
was the boss, the general, and didn't explain anything, and he
Okay.
certainly didn't brag about anything, and he didn't have any gold records on the wall,
Mm.
and I never knew anything about what he did. But one of the stories that's lore about him is, and which I was able to ask him about towards the end of his life, was he was in Boston again, and he was in a club, and he was in there early during the day, and he was just sitting in a booth, and Charlie Parker was setting up
Oh, wow.
to perform. Then you notice that a whole separate crew came in, and they were setting up microphones, and they were recording the show. And Parker was sitting in another booth, and so my dad just walked up to him and he said, "Hey, who are these guys recording you?" And Parker goes, "Oh, I don't know. They're a radio station or something." And my dad said, "So you don't even know who's recording you?" He said, "Well, it's radio. Isn't that like a good thing?" And my dad said to him, he's like, let me tell you give you a little lesson. Never do anything that you do well for free.
Hmm.
He goes, I'll pay you $1,000 right now to send them away and let me record you tonight. And he was like in shock, and he was like, "Oh wow, that's great." So they made this deal, and that recording is like one of Parker's famous live albums, live in Boston.
Wow, that's cool.
And that almost that pretty much ended my father's relationship with Parker while Parker was alive. But when Parker was on his deathbed, he told his wife Doris, "You're going to have to deal with a lot of stuff after I'm gone." And the only man I've ever met in the music business that gave me a fair shake was this guy, Aubrey Mayhew. So talked to him. And they got together and they formed a record company called Charlie Parker Music. And then
Oh, cool.
they were partners for a while.
Mm.
And Doris grew weary of the business, and she sold her half to my dad. And when my dad passed away, he left it to me and my brothers.
Hmm.
And all that's really left of it now is publishing. So I'd say we own about 33% of Parker's publishing catalog.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I did not know that. Huh. So do you guys do any kind of new projects or anything, or like Do you have anything to do with the day to day or any operations of what, his legacy and stuff?
No, I mean, I have a publishing administrator in Nashville because my dad has a vast
Mm,
publishing catalog, mostly country music,
yeah,
and it is a big job working it. And I'm just not a publisher. I'm just not interested in any of that. So I have a publisher in Nashville, and they handle all that
yeah.
licensing and things like that. They'll give me courtesy emails like, this movie wants to use this song. Do you approve? And I just write, yes, I do.
Okay. So wait, your dad actually co-wrote some songs with Johnny Paycheck and I'm sure other people too, right? Like, did he write like "Take This Job and Shove It" and stuff like that? Famous songs like that, or?
No, that was written by David Allan Coe.
Oh no, okay. I did not know that. Okay, interesting. Because I mean, I think the Johnny Paycheck's the famous version, or at least that most people know anyway. You know what I mean? But
Well, I mean, Paycheck recorded it first.
mhm,
Coe was pitching songs. That's, he was a Nashville songwriter. He pitched songs to a lot of people. And it
yeah,
was, I think the song was pitched to a couple of guys, and Paycheck liked it and wanted to record it. And, you know, Coe's got a great version of it too, but the Paycheck version is the definitive version. It was like a cultural phenomenon.
yeah,
Everybody, it was a crossover hit. It was a pop song of the
yeah.
time, and they made a movie, Take This Job and Shove It,
Right, right.
based on the song. So it was quite a significant thing. But that song was not during my father's time with Paycheck. My father discovered Paycheck, gave him
Mhm.
his name. His name wasn't Paycheck when my dad met him. It was Donnie Young,
Okay.
and he had reached he had recorded a couple of records with Decca with
Mhm.
no success, no hits, and he was George Jones' backup singer. He was almost like his Flava Flav. If you watch old footage of George Jones singing, Paycheck is off to the side, and whenever there's background vocals, like Paycheck doesn't go up to his own microphone, he goes up to George's microphone, and they sing together. It's very
Uh-huh.
cool,
Yeah.
you know, because he's playing bass and singing backup. And my dad used to say, and a lot of country music historians say that George based his cadence and his voice on Paycheck.
Mhm.
And George wouldn't be the first one to imitate Paycheck. Paycheck had a very distinctive style, and I mean, no shade on George. George is the greatest.
Right, of course. Yeah, I hear you. So your dad also worked with David Allan Coe too, right? I think that's correct.
No, my dad wouldn't have worked with David Allan Coe.
Okay.
Didn't particularly approve of him, even though he knew him and they were friends. And
Okay.
there was a period of time when I was a teenager, when we lived in Nashville, we lived on Music Row. My dad had a building right on Music Row where Reba McEntire's studio is now.
Hmm.
And we lived in it. On the second floor, and my dad's offices for Little Darlin' were there. And
Hmm.
underneath us was another record label. And it was just like, back then, Music Row was just houses. People would set up shop, publishing companies, recording studios, all the record labels. They weren't in high-rise buildings with receptionists. They were in houses.
Yeah.
And we had kind of a parking area behind our house. All the houses and on Music Row are kind of face the main street, and then
Hmm.
behind they have like a parking lot, and then there's an alleyway in between, and then there's another parking lot, and then houses from the other side of the street. And all the people from all the record labels and publishing companies and stuff would just walk across the alley into each other's back doors and stuff. So my dad, if I was ever bored or hanging out, my dad would say, "Oh, go hang out with Mary Claire at Cedarwood." And Mary Claire was the receptionist over at Cedarwood Publishing Company, which was also a record label, which
Uh,
was owned by John Denny, who like ran the Opry in the old days. And I would go in there, and it would be common to see Conway Twitty sitting in reception, just chatting with Mary Claire, and I would just sit there and basically join in as a kid. I was like 12 or 13,
yeah.
and hang out and talk with Conway Twitty and whoever else might have been there. And it could have been any number of people you ran into all the time. And
Yeah.
Mary Claire's husband, Curly, co-wrote "He Stopped Loving Her Today," that George
Oh,
Jones said his greatest hit and probably the greatest country music song of all time. And we'd often go to dinner at Mary Claire and Curly's house, and
hmm.
he was just Mary Claire's husband. And it was the same thing with Coe. I guess you thought Coe and my dad worked together because David Allan Coe taught me how to tune my guitar.
Right, you posted about that online is where I saw that. Yeah, and
He just he would, I guess he was on tour most of the time, so he didn't have a permanent place to live.
mhm,
And when he was in town, he would he had a limousine, and he would park it in our backyard in our parking area, like next to my skateboard ramp, which
mhm.
I wasn't allowed to ride when Co was sleeping in his limousine. But I was just starting to play guitar then, and I would, invariably, I didn't know how to play.
Yeah.
So I'd go up to my dad and I would say, "Can you tune my guitar for me?" And he would tune it. Then he got bored with doing that. He said, "Listen, go ask Co to tune it." And I would just go out on the back porch and go down the steps and knock on the window and
Mhm.
Co push the door open. He'd be like, "What can I do for you, Paris?"
Yeah.
Tune my guitar, and he'd go bang, 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 and hand it back to me and close the door and go back to sleep. Because he
Nice.
probably hung over.
Yeah.
He was a roughneck. And
Yeah.
after about the 10th time, I asked him to tune my guitar. He's like, Paris, wouldn't you like to know how to tune your guitar yourself? And I
Mhm.
was like, not really. And he goes, well, I'm going to show you how anyway. And he showed me the whole fifth fret thing,
Yeah.
and that was it. And David Allen Coe taught me how to tune my guitar, which was funny because the funny thing about it is, Coe was just another guy like Conway Twitty across the alley, or going. I remember sitting and having breakfast with Grandpa Jones and Minnie Pearl,
Mhm.
at some country music event. Like my dad just, busy, and he just sat me at a table with Grandpa Jones and Minnie Pearl and Loretta Lynn or somebody,
Yeah.
and Coe was just the guy who lived in the car in our backyard. And you know, when and I would just spend my summers down in Nashville. I lived in New York, and I would just go home, and then I started spending less and less time in Nashville, and I just got involved in my life in the music world. I started the Cro-Mags and started making my own music, and I never really thought about the guy in the backyard of my house, and just slowly but surely, developing my musical taste, discovering artists on my own.
Mhm.
The line, Tom McNeil's bar,
Yeah.
Legit Idiot, when he opened his first bar on First Avenue. The thing that me and Tom had in common was country music. And when he opened up this bar, he said, "I have a task for you." And I go, "What's that?" He goes, "I want you to arm the jukebox."
Nice.
Uh, so he gave me like $500, and because I knew I was going to Nashville for the summer. And he said, "Well, you're down in Nashville. Here's your budget. Get me $500 worth of singles." And I loaded up on all these singles, and some of it was David Allen Coe. You never even called me by my name.
Yeah.
And these were all singles, of course.
Vinyl jukebox,
And
huh?
yeah, I gave all those singles to Tommy, and
Yeah.
it established the jukebox for the Village Idiot, which also established the jukebox for Hogs and Heifers
Right. Yeah, that was a big song in that place, man.
and Coyote Ugly, because all those bars were spin-offs of the Village Idiot.
Yeah.
But so I became a fan of Coe, and I remember, it wasn't even that long ago, maybe 5 years ago. Coe was like doing his last shows. He was playing shows up until the end. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Went to see him at B King's in New York, and I just posted on Facebook, "Oh, I saw Coe tonight. It was awesome," and or that something like that. And my brother texts me out of the blue, and he's like, "Hey man, you saw Code last night?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was." I said, he was sitting down most of the time, but it was pretty awesome. And he goes, "That's really cool that you became a fan of his." I go, "Okay, like you didn't point out like all the 50 other artists that I love." I thought it was odd that he was mentioning Coe. And he
Yeah.
goes, and I go, "Why do you think that's odd? Coe's, he's a staple of country music." And he goes, "Well, it's, he taught you how to tune your guitar and all that. It must be really." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "You know, Coe, Coe used to live in our backyard in his car. You don't remember that?" And I go, "Wait a second. David Allen Coe is Coe?" And he
That's
goes,
funny.
"Yeah." And I was like, it was just, wow,
Yeah.
what an amazing revelation to have discovered him on my own without that like little bit of nudge of knowing who he was.
Yeah. That's pretty funny. Can you play like country style guitar? I'm sure you can, right? It must have been sort of an inspiration.
No,
Not at all.
I don't. I mean, there's definitely some country in Cro-Mags. Like there's a song called um, shit, I can't even remember the name of the song from the Revenge album. But like when I was playing the initial riffs for the song, like when before it was a finished song, just introducing it to the group, Harley used to always say, "Oh my God, it's fucking it sounds like you're playing a hillbilly lick the way you're strumming it." And I was like, "When there's drums up behind it, it'll sound heavy," and it did, of course. So I'm definitely influenced by country music. I'm influenced by just the melody on top. I'm influenced by the arrangements. I've
Mhm.
done a lot of I've done a lot of arranging in songs based on traditional stuff that I know from country music. It's but I don't play other people's songs like Led Zeppelin's my favorite band of all time. I don't know how to
Yeah,
play any Led Zeppelin songs. Kiss, love
yeah.
me Kiss. I only know how to play one Kiss song, and that's because last year Drew Stone asked me to get up on stage with him and play. What was it? What did we play? I can't even remember what we played. There was somebody we played Love Gun,
Mm, mm.
and
That's cool.
I know how to play that, and that's the Destroyer poster. But I was lucky early on. I guess because I didn't really know anybody to play with.
Mhm.
I just started writing my own material, so I would have something to play. I wasn't the guy who like found the stoner on the block and learned how to play Stairway to Heaven or something like that. Like I don't know how to play Stairway to Heaven. I have no interest in learning how to play it. I got this singular focus that I should write songs because I did have an ambition to become a musician because I was surrounded by all my life. It seemed like something that was very attainable.
Mhm.
My dad gave me that understanding that the world was at your fingertips, or that kind of world, an artist's world. And
Mhm.
not that he wanted me to become a musician because he didn't. He used to refer to musicians as hillbillies. He imagined me doing something more on an artistic end. I mean, I have a degree in fine arts, so that's the direction he thought I was going to go. But
Yeah.
to this day, I'm still not interested, and it's probably the reason why after I stopped the Cro-Mags, which was the vehicle for my songs. That was based. That was like I tried. Yeah, I did try out for one band before the Cro-Mags. It was the Mad because I had heard. They were the big one of the two or three big bands on the scene in New York, and I
Yeah.
heard that a kid in my school got the job playing bass, and I was like astonished, like standing there, like 15 years old in front of my school, like what? A
Uh,
kid in school it gets to be in the Mad? Like how is that possible? I thought musicians just fell from the heavens or something, or they came from some place that magical, and I just made it my mission to go and be in the Mad, and I was in the Mad for about a month until the singer George, who just passed away this year,
yeah. Yeah.
George, told me I couldn't write songs. I tried to show him a song, and he just like shut me down immediately. And I was like, oh. And and being 15 years old, I didn't think to myself, well, I can bide my time and use my position in the band to elevate myself. And things like I was like, fuck this. I just took
Yeah.
my bass off and I was playing bass in the Mad. I was a bass player at that time.
Uh,
Took my bass and I put it in the case, and George was like, what are you doing? Because we had just spent a month rehearsing, getting me up to speed so to play a gig.
mhm.
And I just looked at her and I just told it like it was. I said, I can't be in a band where I can't write music. Everybody in Aerosmith writes music. Isn't that the way it's supposed to be? Because that was what I knew from reading Cream magazine and stuff.
Yeah.
You want to be like Rush, you want to be like Led Zeppelin, you want to be like Kiss. Everybody in Kiss sings. Everybody in Kiss writes songs. All these guys wrote. Aerosmith, all those guys wrote songs. That's what a band is. That's what I thought it was. I couldn't even understand this idea that George said to me, I write all the songs. But it was a lesson. I was mad at George at the time, but like he did me a favor. I didn't waste any more time with him. And my plan from that point on was to start my own band, playing my own songs. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what I did.
Yeah.
You know,
Now,
almost, for the first 3 years of the Cro-Mags, we only played my songs. There were
mhm.
no other songs. I
Yeah.
was waiting, and every once in a while, a riff would get thrown in here and there, like a bridge or something. But it
Yeah.
wasn't until we had like a lineup, like a drummer, because we didn't have a drummer for the first 2.5 years. We didn't have anybody. It was, people look at the scene now. You look at you look at a video of the Sound and Fury Festival, which I'm seeing all over Instagram right now,
Mm-hmm.
and they're playing, in front of tens of thousands of people. But when I was starting my band, it was on a little, a 10 block radius street where the scene was probably 50 or 60 kids who you saw at every single show,
Yeah.
and everybody knew each other, and there just wasn't this big pool of musicians, so we couldn't find anybody to play with. And I was playing bass up until the second year that we were writing songs, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you start off playing bass, or was that like out of necessity? Like the Mad needed a bass player, and you could do that too, or did you actually start off playing bass?
No, well, I started off playing guitar, but I did. My dad bought me like an acoustic guitar with like a painting of a bird on the
Nice.
pick guard, and I hated it. I wouldn't practice it. And as I was listening to music and stuff, the thing that I started to focus on, that I really loved and appreciated, were two guys, and that was Chris Squire and Geddy Lee.
Mhm.
And I decided I wanted to play bass. I wanted to be like those guys.
Okay.
And so my dad got me a bass, and I assembled like a bass amp. Like I got an acoustic bass head, and I had a like this really, it was like a custom PA speaker. It had like four tens in it. It wasn't a proper bass cabinet, but that's what I had.
Hmm.
The funny thing is, when I transferred to guitar, I still used that amp. Like the first gig I played at CBGB's, I played with a bass head,
Nice.
playing guitar through a bass head, which isn't that unusual because most people don't know this, but like the Marshall JCM 800, well,
Yeah.
this is a 2000, but the Marshall JCM 800 was developed for bass.
Hmm.
And then they were like, wow, it sounds good with guitar too. So
Well, yeah, I think Lemmy played through
I
a
was a bass
Marshall.
player. I was a bass player. I played bass in the Mad. And when we started the band,
Hmm.
I try to create clarity by saying when we started the band, because we didn't call it the Cro-Mags for years. It was just the band, and we had like a million different names. But I was the bass player for quite a long time, and all those early songs that I wrote, that I even wrote before that band started. Like one of the songs I tried to present at Screaming Mad George and the Mad was World Peace.
Oh,
That entire song I had written when I was in a band called my like real high school band was called Reported Missing, and the singer's name was Paul Dordow, and he was just a guy in my neighborhood. He was like 1 year older than me.
uh,
He was like 16, but he had his own apartment. Like he was like the cool guy in the neighborhood.
yeah.
And and we had a band that kind of sounded like we were trying to sound like Rush. And at some point, I got into Motorhead. I got into Motorhead because of Paul.
Uh,
He had he had the Ace of Spades record, and we were listening to that. And then we started listening to Sex Pistols a lot. And the next thing you know, I started writing different kinds of songs. And one of the first songs in that new batch of songs was World Peace. And when he first heard it, he said, that song, and he would do this. He would like make pronouncements because he was like the cool guy. He always wore sunglasses inside. And after we saw Quadrophenia, he always had a bag full of black pills, and he was always taking pills. He's a priest now.
mm,
He actually married me and my wife.
mm,
But after he heard, like I was sitting there playing we'd gone into the rehearsal studio, and I just picked up my bass and I started playing World Peace. And these guys were just looking at me like I was out of my mind. Like they didn't get it. They didn't understand it at all, except Paul. And Paul said, this song will be called World Peace Can't Be Done. And I was like, oh, that's great. And from that point on, I called it that. Like even when I tried to show it to Screaming Mad George, I was like, hey, check out this song I wrote called World Peace Can't Be Done. And I started playing, and he just like grabbed the neck of the bass to stop me from playing. And he was
oh
like,
boy.
I write the songs to this band. I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, so I played bass. So when we started the band,
Mm,
the early songs, Life of My Own, and It's the Limit. Actually, I wrote It's the Limit on my BC Rich. It was the first song I wrote on my BC Rich right after I got it. But we were playing for a little while, and it was like one of these things where it was the availability of any musician made it necessary to play musical chairs.
Hmm.
And very early on, this guy who was the manager of the Bad Brains, he immediately was like, "Oh, what you guys are doing sounds really cool." Like he came and watched us play like in some apartment somewhere.
Is that
And
Jerry Williams you're talking about?
no, he's a producer. This was a manager of the Bad Brains.
Okay.
His name was Dave Hahn.
Okay. Yeah.
He was also the drummer of a band called Artless, and he was in the Mad too for a little while.
Yeah.
But he
Okay.
at that time, and uh, and he played drums a little bit. So he said, "Let me book a rehearsal so we can hear what it sounds like with drums." And then he basically said, can you play guitar to me? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. So we rehearsed a couple of times with Harley playing bass, Dave on drums, and me on guitar,
Hmm.
and it was kind of astonishing to finally hear the songs with drums, and it really lit a fire under our ass because we were so happy with just sitting in rooms playing my songs over and over and over. And me, I was just so thrilled because my first foray into the real music business, playing with a guy who was in a real band, which was playing with George, and George just had no interest in hearing my songs.
Yeah. You didn't want to hear it.
Here I
That's
was,
crazy.
here I was in a new band, and it was all about, what did you write this week? What do you got now?
Yeah.
And
Nice.
that was super exciting. And then to hear it with Dave playing drums, who he was a marginal drummer, but just even hearing a song like "Life of My Own,"
Hmm.
which is a pretty simple song to play, just sounded so powerful. It was so validating, like this thing that you write by yourself without any drums, without the knowledge of or the experience of what it's like to play with a drummer, and then
Yeah.
hearing it was kind of startling. It was shocking, and it also became very motivating, and it became fire to write more songs. And I would every day out after school, I would just go straight home and get on my bass or my acoustic guitar, and I would write anything I could, just so I would have something new to show
Mhm.
every time I showed up, and to keep that fire and that excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so yes, but it when we after we rehearsed with Dave Hahn, it became apparent that I wanted to be the guitarist.
Hmm.
And I also like the idea of having Harley out front and not behind the drums. So that's what we did. And we pursued trying to find different people. But then, the next person we auditioned was Todd Youth, and he played bass. So Harley went back to the drums. And then
Oh wow.
we got rid of Todd Youth, and then this guy Steve Psycho came in, and he played bass. So Harley stayed on the drums. It was like, it was just musical chairs. I never
Yeah.
went back to the bass. I never went back to the bass, but we finally, I was a skater, and I skated all the ramps around town. If you found out there were ramps somewhere, then there were these ramps on the west side in Riverside Park, and I would
Hmm.
go there, which was really frowned upon. It was just like the way it is in California, locals only.
Uh-huh.
I think I was just such a crazy skater. I was going for shit nobody was going for. That they were like, "Oh my God, that's crazy! This crazy white boy is going for crazy air." So that I was allowed to skate. He was one of the kids that I saw there regularly, and I just knew him as a skater. I didn't know him as a.
Wait, who was it? You froze for 1 second. Was it Mackie you said? Or I couldn't hear you for a second.
Yes, it was Mackie,
Okay. Okay.
and I would see Mackie, and I knew him as a skateboarder.
Hmm.
I didn't know he was a musician at
Oh, you
all.
didn't know like Urban Blight and stuff like that first?
Well, Urban Blight didn't happen for a decade.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
We're talking about like when I was 14.
Okay.
You know, I
Yeah.
don't think Urban Blight happened until much later, and I still don't know Urban Blight's music. I think I heard it once or twice, and
Honestly, I don't either. I just remember from CBGB's ads, and I thought he was in that before Cro-Mags.
no.
But okay.
He
Oh, okay.
was he was in a band called Frontline,
Hmm.
and Frontline's most famous for the fact that the Beastie Boys recorded one of their songs on, I think, Check Your Head,
Hmm.
because they were a band that came and they had a really solid foundation with cool riffs, but they didn't really have songs, and they never had a great singer, and they never recorded anything. I
Yeah.
think they did some demos, but anyway, one day I went to CBGB's, and I was standing on there was this if you when you walked into CV's off to the left, there was kind of like it was like elevated, like almost like a stage, and there was a pool table up there, and it was surrounded by a railing that was made with like pipes you get from a plumbing supply store. So it
Mm-hmm.
literally looked like a bunch of pipes, and I was standing up there by the pool table with Doctor No, and we were just kind of standing there watching this band come out on stage, and it was Frontline,
Mm-hmm.
and they started playing a song, and I was like I immediately perked my ears perked up because a lot of the bands just kind of three chord punk, nothing really standing out, and then there was this band that sounded tight and they had cool riffs and they were and I looked at Doc and I was like, holy shit, they sound great, and his first comment was, they're a Motorhead bite. And I was like, well, okay, that's fine. But if you're going to bite somebody, it might as well be Motorhead. I felt like I totally did that. I modeled the Cro-Mags after Motorhead. When I wrote World Peace, there was no word hardcore. Nobody was using the word hardcore. I
Yeah.
thought I was writing a Motorhead song. In my mind, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do what Lemmy does. And so
Uh,
when he made that comment, I was like, oh, whatever. But I kept focusing on the band, and I thought all three of them were great. The bass player Noah was great, and Miles Kelly was great on guitar,
mm,
and Mackie was great on drums. And of course, I recognized him. I was like, "Oh my God, that's that kid from the skateboard ramps."
mm.
So uh, I began basically courting him to quit Frontline and join our band.
Oh wow.
The sales pitches like we have a bunch of great songs, and it's next level, and it's just going to be a great thing, and you should get on board. And initially he wasn't. He was like, "Oh, these are my boys. I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to stick it out." I guess partly that Frontline was floundering a little bit and not really gaining any ground, and
Mm,
so I guess he just decided to give it a shot. And when we played with Mackie, it was again hearing the songs, realized it was great, and
yeah.
we had a singer, and it was like now we were actually a band, and we had a name when we started calling the band Cro-Mags. And,
Mm,
and I immediately, after Eric was able to sing like four songs, I walked into CBGB's and booked a show. So,
nice.
but by that time I was playing guitar, and
Uh,
uh, and that was basically the way it stayed. Me, Mackie, and Harley
yeah.
until right before we recorded Age of Quarrel. Doug joined the band, but he had very little impact on the first album. He didn't write anything, and
Yeah.
he
Did he
played he played
did he play
great.
solos on there, or is that all you on leads?
Oh, no, 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 he definitely played solos. He played great solos. What I meant is he wasn't in the band for a long time. He wasn't
Right.
part of the years of developing and writing.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
He just came in at the end and added a more, you know, he it's hard to say what he added a like, he had a swagger.
Mm.
If you ever saw Crowd, they were such a great band,
Crowd
and
was good. Yeah. Crowd was great. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
they were a great band for a lot of reasons, but he was the Jimmy Page of Crowd.
Uh,
So it felt like we were bringing that kind of thing into the group, but it always felt once he was in the group, he was holding back or something. I don't know what it was. He played great, but he didn't contribute much.
yeah. And then, like, ultimately, Mackie didn't last too long with you guys either, right? Like, he's not even in your first video. That was Petey Hines, right?
Right. We released Age of Quarrel. By the time Age of Quarrel came out, there was so much animosity and tension
Uh,
between us and Mackie. And we did a 1 month tour immediately after Age of Quarrel came out, supporting GBH.
uh-huh.
And on that tour, it was just childish game playing, and we weren't happy at all. And then we had the next tour was going to be with Motorhead, and we were off for I think 2 weeks between the GBH tour and the Motorhead tour.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like on fire. We couldn't believe it. We were going to tour the United States with Motorhead. It's like,
Yeah.
it was a dream come true. We're still dealing with all this like bullshit, like being late, not like playing the songs wrong just to be a dick.
Hmm.
I mean, and actually, I won't say to be a dick. I'll say not playing the songs right to be in opposition to us.
Right.
It was like it felt like there was some kind of like a power play, and he was doing what he could to throw a monkey wrench into things. So, from his position, maybe he was just trying to negotiate.
Hmm.
It just, I guess, none of us were young enough to articulate our problems and our needs. And I'm in retrospect, I will afford everybody that luxury, but ultimately, that tension uh, manifested itself in a very bizarre situation, which was I got a phone call about 5 days after we got home from tour, and it was our manager, Chris Williamson, and he told me he had just gotten off the phone with Mackie, and that Mackie demanded to be paid more, uh, and that he wanted it kept secret from the rest of the band, but he demanded that he get this amount of money to do the Motorhead tour, or he was just not going to show up.
Oh man.
And I said, "Oh, okay." And my one of my best pals at the time was Petey Hines. I mean, I hung out with him every single night for
Hmm.
years. We hung out at the Village Idiot together.
Oh, nice.
Me, him, and his girlfriend, and all of our friends. We were
Hmm.
like day to day, everyday friends. And we had actually tried to get Petey in the band like a year or two before. When we were still developing the band, and John had just joined the band, and I really wasn't kind of happy with the way things were going, and
Hmm.
we were already having conflicts with Mackie. We had a jam where me and Harley basically auditioned Roger Moret and Petey Hines simultaneously. We booked a rehearsal studio, and we all showed up, and those guys wanted to join the band, and
Um,
so I that was also the day that I came in with the song Malfunction, because I don't like I didn't want to go in there and play World Peace and have them just play World Peace. I already know how that goes. I just wanted to see what they would bring to the table with a new song. So
hmm.
I showed Petey and Harley how to play Malfunction real quick, and Roger just kind of like stream of consciousness did stuff, and we spent the entire rehearsal playing Malfunction. It was awesome.
Wow.
And when the rehearsal was over, I was like, I'm sold. Petey, Roger in the band, this is way better. We're having a good time, which we haven't had in rehearsal basically ever when we were the other four. And
Hmm.
so, Roger and Petey left, and me and Harley walked. Which we would often do is we rehearsed on 30th Street on the west side, and we would just walk with our guitars to the Lower East Side down to the Village Idiot or the Park Inn or whatever bar we were going to.
Uh,
And while we were talking, immediately we were both like, "That's it, right? Let's do it. It's decided." We didn't even discuss it much.
hmm.
And when we got down to Avenue A, Harley went his way, and I saw Roger parked in his van. Him and his girlfriend lived in this van that was always parked on Avenue A, and I saw it, and I immediately walked up, and I wanted to tell him the good news. And Petey was in there, and I just jumped in the van, and I said, "Hey, man, we didn't really have to discuss it much. We loved the jam. It was fucking great." And
Hmm.
they were both kind of like, "Oh," and I was like, "What?" And they're like, "We changed our mind."
Oh
I was
man.
like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Was it that bad?" And they would go, "No, we loved it. We loved playing that song, that new song you wrote." And I was like, "Oh, cool. So what's the problem?" He goes, "Well, Roger says, well, we don't want to be in a band with Harley."
Oh man.
And I was like, "Oh, so what we would like to do is start a new band with you." And I was like, hmm. I mean, even with all the turmoil that was going on with the band,
Yeah. Yeah.
it didn't make any sense. It was a band that was playing my songs. It was my band.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't even really give it much thought. I didn't even say, "Oh, let me think about it." I said, it doesn't make really sense to me to
Yeah.
start all over again, to basically just do the same thing. which is be the primary songwriter in a band. It would have just been, in retrospect, of course, looking back, I should have
Yeah.
done it. It would have been great. It would have been like a head start with playing with Petey, a drummer I'd much preferred playing with.
Uh,
And who knows what would have happened. Well, what would have happened was the songs that World Peace, Malfunction, Show You No Mercy, all those songs, Signs of the Times, they just would have been with Roger singing.
yeah. Wait, so
But
was AF on a break or something, or why was he doing
no,
that with you guys?
no, it's funny, AF has had such success and longevity
Uh,
in an admirable way,
yeah.
and it's always, you always just make the assumption is like these guys are so tight and they stuck together all these years. But even back then, Roger was always rolling his eyes about the band, and like he was always complaining about it, and he just wanted to leave.
Okay.
And 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 his plan was to start a band with me and Petey Hines, and it just didn't work out. So I, went down the block and I saw Harley, and I went up to him and I said, "They don't want to do it." And they were like, and he was like, "What?"
Oh
And I said,
man.
he goes, "Oh well," and he just went about his business, like, whatever.
Mm,
He already had a band. It wasn't like we would be put out or anything. And
mhm.
we just continued rehearsing with those guys as if nothing had happened.
Yeah. That's funny. That's funny, man. So then eventually you obviously do get Pete Hines in the band later
Yeah,
on.
well, that was that. Like I said, we were on tour. We were on tour with GBH
Yeah.
for months, and Mackie made this demand of money. And again, being diplomatic and more practical about it now. He had bills to pay. When he left his mother at home, he had bills to pay. He had to leave his mom with some money. He worked in New York, and he shared his money with his family, and we were taking him away from that, and he needed a certain amount of money, but he never articulated that to us. I mean,
Interesting.
I'm also just guessing that,
Yeah.
based on some of the conversations I've had with him. I wish he had had that conversation with me
Yeah. Well, yeah. So
instead
yeah,
of throwing
behind your
our
back.
managers on our back. Because again, I was young. I felt stung. I also, you know, a lot of people perceived me and Harley together as one. And
Mm,
whatever conflicts that Mackie had with him, he associated with me. And so whenever I tried to guide the band or the drums or the song, he would rebel against me. And I think, also looking back, I think primarily that was because he viewed me, he associated me with the fight that he had just had with Harley about some stupid thing.
yeah. Yeah. It makes sense. I guess. Yeah. And then so then he's ultimately in the Bad Brains later for a while too. But
That
do you
was
know this might be weird?
that was much later. There's this whole
Yeah.
myth that he quit the Cro-Mags to join Bad Brains. It's
Well.
not accurate at all.
Yeah.
What happened was, I called up Petey, or I ran into him that night or whatever it was, and it was
Yeah.
like, I was like, "Are you ready? We're going on tour with Motorhead." He was like, fucking A." And we went in to rehearse the next day, and it was like he was in the band the entire time.
Nice.
He knew all the songs. We busted through the set like we had always been a band. There was no transition period.
Yeah.
It was just incredible. And we went on tour, and the band was new. Even the renowned that Mackie achieved being the drummer on that album hadn't really set in yet,
Mm,
because nobody said a word to me on the Motorhead tour. Like, "Hey, where's your drummer?" Or like, "What happened? Who's this guy?" There
mm,
was none of that. And we just proceeded and toured with Motorhead. And then from that point on, we became a headliner. And we subsequently toured Europe and toured the States as a headliner with Petey, and wrote the Best Wishes album and
yeah.
put out that second album, which was way more successful than An Age of Quarrel.
Right.
And,
It sold a lot more at the time, right?
and it's funny that all the like, "Oh, I believe uh, Cro-Mags were better with Mackie," that didn't raise its head until basically the band was over, like many years later, and Age of Quarrels looked at with nostalgia, and looking at the component parts and valuing them all,
Yeah.
equally as you
Yeah.
should when you're evaluating a piece of collaborative art, despite all the conflicts that we had. Everybody who played on that record played a role, and it is what it is. It's not what I wanted it to be. It is only what it is, and what it is what moved people, and that's all that matters. And Mackey's a part of that, and Petey's a
Yeah.
part of it too. I enjoy if I was going to listen to an album, I would much more enjoy listening to Best Wishes, but that's for a whole nother bunch of reasons. It has nothing to do with the component parts. I just like the songs better.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Do you remember recording that album?
Of course, I remember everything vividly.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of times I ask guys and they're like, I don't remember. It's, you know what I mean? So I hesitate to ask questions like that sometimes, but
I mean, I played a much more of a role than most band members do. It's like when I produce a Marauder album,
yeah.
when those guys played their tracks, they were gone. I wouldn't let anybody stick around.
Uh-huh.
So they probably have very little recollection of the recording, except for Anthony, who I spent the most time with, and George, who did the vocals.
Hmm.
But when we did Age of Quarrel, we did the basic tracks in one day, and then everybody else was gone. Nobody else participated except for John when he sang his vocals, and he
Yeah.
sang his vocals and he left. But the mixing process
Yeah.
and getting sounds and talking about how the record's going to sound and stuff like that. When you're involved in it and you're thinking about it and you're plotting it and you're planning it, I guess it imprints on your memory much
Yeah.
better.
Do you remember, speaking of Age of Quarrel basic tracks, Harley told me once years ago that ended up being the final bass tracks he thought were going to be scratch tracks. He was told, just whatever, just lay it down and then you'll come back. And then he was told later on, no, no, it's done. You're done. That was it. Do you know if that's true at all?
No, I mean, almost anything Harley says is not true, but that's particularly funny that it's not true because Harley is one of these guys who likes to say things like, "No, man, it's the magic of the moment when you're playing that shit live. It's got to be what we play in the room at that time." And so he was pushing for that when we recorded. And
Hmm.
then ultimately, when the bass sound wasn't that great, this is the excuse he makes. If he thought he was going to go in and re-record more bass, why didn't he do it? Just doesn't make any sense. Why didn't he raise his hand and say, "I want to do this"? It wasn't like anything was done behind his back. He was welcome to come to the studio anytime.
Yeah.
And 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 it's weird that he even says that because it's so much his philosophy. Like when we were doing the Revenge record, he made such a big deal about how it had to be what we use live, and he didn't want to spend all the time working on the bass. But ultimately, when we did go in and redo all the bass, it
Uh-huh.
sounded really better. And also, when we would, like, for example, when we did Revenge, there were like 4 songs that he didn't even know how to play when we did the basic tracks that me and Dave DeCenzo played by ourselves.
Hmm.
So he had to learn it and then from the track and play while he was learning it. And the bass was sounding really good. And so when it came time to repair the other bass tracks, you know, it was like kind of a no-brainer. It was like, oh, let's keep going with this. It sounds so great.
Yeah.
But the thing with Age of Quarrel was we didn't even redo the guitars. What you hear on the album is the basic tracks. Me
So
and
you guys, was it live, the three of you guys, and four of you
yeah,
guys in studio?
100%. I
Yeah.
mean, that was a lot of part of the problem. That was a problem with us and between us and Mackie was those takes on the record aren't necessarily the best takes. They're just the only takes that we made it through all the way.
Right. I
Not,
hear
not major mistakes. And the funny thing is, our engineer at the time, um, he was like, "You guys are so tight. You're like erasing each other. It's so tight." And
you.
and which I thought was great, because we had practiced a ton, you know,
Yeah.
it, me and Doug and Harley, it was super tight, and and ultimately the takes that were chosen were just the ones that didn't have any mistakes, even though the song "It's the Limit" does have a mistake in it, a flub in it, which if
Mhm.
you have to listen to or be as inside the song. I wrote the song, so it's like I'm so inside it. When a mistake happened, I like it's going to be like that ever.
Yeah.
Drives me nuts. But ultimately, the fire is there, beginning to end, one little flub. It's like you hear flubs on Led Zeppelin albums too. So I
Yeah.
was really, I was really attached to that at the time, and it bothered me. And it doesn't bother me so much anymore because I'm not so attached to that record.
Yeah. I hear you.
That record is, like I said, what it is,
Yeah.
and I can't argue with the crazy faces of people. I mean, I was at the Tomahawk show last night,
Yeah.
trying to watch the show, and this guy like nudged up next to me, up again on the rail, and stood there for like 5 songs before he finally was stuck his head in and
Uh,
gave his input about how important that record was, and he thank you.
yeah.
I get that. So and funny to say that, the first time I met Mike Patton, I met him at the Ritz when Faith No More was first blowing up, and
Was
because I
that?
was hanging out with Jerry Harrison from the Talking Heads,
Oh,
and
cool.
we went to the show because Jerry wanted to meet the guys in Faith No More because he wanted to produce their record.
Mhm.
I was friends with his au pair.
Nice.
We used to hang out at the Village Idiot.
Uh, was that the Soundgarden and Voivod Faith No More show at the Ritz? Do you remember?
Yeah, that's exactly what it
I
was.
was at that show. That was awesome. Right?
But
Faith No More actually opened that show, and
the
Voivod
au pair,
headlined.
the au pair and Jerry Harrison's wife
Uh,
and I hang out all the time at the Village Idiot. So periodically, the au pair would say, "Oh, you should be friends with Jerry," and his wife was like, "Yeah, you guys should be friends. You're both musicians and stuff like that." But Jerry Harrison was very much like, "I'm in the Talking Heads. What's the name of your band again? What, the what?" And, and at one point, I was over at the house, and he was usually very standoffish. And he came up to me. He's like, "Do you know this band Faith No More?" And I said, "No." He said, "Oh, I really like to produce them." And I said, "Oh, I wasn't even aware that he had produced anybody. Apparently, he had produced the Violent Femmes or something." And he
mm,
was in the Talking Heads, so of course he had the luxury to be able to do that kind of stuff. And he said to me, "If they're playing next week, would you go with me?" And I was like, "Sure, I'd love to." And it was the show that you mentioned, Soundgarden,
yeah.
Voivod, and I never heard of Soundgarden either.
Oh,
Yeah, I never heard of Voivod either. I think I just heard of them because we had played with them or something, but I didn't know much about
I was
them.
gonna say I think you guys were on a festival or something with them back then, but yeah.
So me and Jerry, we go to the Ritz, which is Webster Hall now, and we go up the steps. And as we get to the top of the steps, like the bouncers are like, "Yo, Pete, what's up?" And we go into the manager's office, which is right off to the side there, and I pop my head in, and he's like, "Oh, you plus one?" I'm like, "Yeah," and we walk right in, and Jerry's like, "Wow, how did you do that?" "Jerry, I told you, I played, I sell this place out." He's like,
Yeah,
"Really?" I'm like, "I told you this fucking when you told me where we were going to the show."
yeah.
He's like, "Oh, well, I'm in Talking Heads. I don't remember things like that." So we go in and we watch Faith No More, and they weren't my cup of tea at the time. I didn't become like a real hardcore Faith No More fan until down the road. And then
Mm,
Soundgarden came out and played, and they were just dreadful. They were like out of tune and high on heroin, and it just sounded like garbage. And my friend, my guitar tech was guitar teching for them, and he came
oh,
out and he was like, "Oh, so embarrassed." I go, "What band are you working for?" He's like, "Soundgarden." I was like, "Oh man, they were awful." He was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I know. I was like, "You're guitar teching for them? Why are they so out of tune?" He's like, "They won't let me tune their guitars." I go, "What do you mean?" I said, I want to take them to a luthier and get them all set up, but they say it's part of their sound and all this stuff. I'm like, "Oh, part of their sound is sound like dog shit." And and then at some point, it was between songs before Voivod went on, and Jerry says to me, "God, man, I really love to be able to meet Faith No More." And I was like, "Oh, let's go backstage." And he goes, how can we get backstage?" I'm like, "Dude, I know everybody here. I fucking headlined this place." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's right." So we walk up to the backstage area, and there's a bouncer there, and he's like, "Yo, what's up, Pete?"
mm,
We go, and he's like, "Parris, that's amazing. Does he know you?" How many times I got to
apparently.
explain? So we're in the backstage area, and there's a bunch of people standing around. And so I go back to the bouncer. I'm like, "Hey man, I wasn't really paying attention when they were playing. Do you know what any of the guys in Faith No More look like?" And he says, "Yeah." He goes, "See that guy over there with the hat, like the bowler hat?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "That's the singer. His name is Mike." And I was like, "All right." So I tell Jerry, I'm like, stay right here. I'll go meet him and then I'll introduce you guys. So I walk up to him. I was like, excuse me, is your name Mike? And he says, yeah. And I said, hi, my name's Parris. I said, see that guy over there? That's Jerry Harrison from the Talking Heads. And Mike goes, your name is Parris? I said, yeah. He goes, like Parris from the Cro-Mags? I said, yeah. And he was like, oh, and he hugs, oh my God. You know, Age of Quarrel changed my life. That phrase I've heard more times in my life than like, excuse me, will you pass the salt?
I'm sure.
Quarrel changed my life. And this was early on. So I was used to it already. So when he said it, and I didn't know who Faith No More was, so I was kind of like, oh, that's really nice. I'm like, listen, man, I'd like to introduce you to Jerry Harrison. I was like, Jerry, come over here. And so Jerry comes over, and I'm expecting him, you know, his attention to be diverted to the rock star guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but Mike was like, he didn't take his eyes off me. He was like, man, I have Age of Quarrel in the tape player of my car right now, and it's been there for 4 years
Yeah.
or something like that. He
Yeah.
goes,
Yeah.
I haven't taken it's like I just play it over and over and over. That shit has changed my fucking life. I was like, that's really awesome. I was like, this is Jerry Harrison from the Talking Heads.
Nice. Nice.
Really like produce your album. And I got to tell you, I was also getting so much gratification in the fact that Mike was not interested at all in
Right.
Jerry. Jerry was like talking down to me all fucking night after I got him into this goddamn show. Ultimately, Mike just showed no interest at all, and like they didn't exchange information or anything. And Jerry tried to talk to him, and ultimately, you know, a distracted youth enjoying new fame was just like
Yeah.
scattered, having a great time, and he went off. And but anyway, I was just pointing out that story because last night, standing at the Tomahawk show in the balcony and having this guy telling me
Mhm.
that, you know, Age of Quarrel changed his life, and I'm looking at Mike Patton, remembering how, you know, 30
Yeah.
years, 40 years ago, whenever it was, Mike
Yeah.
Patton, same exact thing, and here we are still comrades and pals, and
Yeah.
still hearing that, and that's great, and
Yeah.
that's
That's
why I
pretty cool. For
can't
sure.
argue with anything anybody ever says, or
Oh, right.
any of my reservations or any of my plans or anything. Age of Quarrel is what it is, and that's great.
Yeah.
Can't be happy.
Absolutely, man. Hell yeah. Let me just ask you a couple more things. I've had you on here for a while now, man. I know that from your online presence, you make a complete distinction between punk and hardcore as two separate things, right? Like, what do
They
you think
are.
is the difference between punk and hardcore?
They're different genres of music.
But you don't even consider them related at all?
Well, of course, they are related.
Yeah.
One replaced the other.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
But you know, the reason, I mean, I don't know why the people that coined the term hardcore, I guess it was DOA or something, but that, to me, that's was irrelevant because like I didn't start a hardcore band. I didn't
Yeah.
start a punk band. I certainly was influenced by the Sex Pistols and the Dead Boys. I loved them. But when I was writing Age of Quarrel, when I wrote World Peace, when I sat down in my mother's kitchen and like pounded out World Peace
Mhm.
like in a frenzy, I thought I was writing a song like Motorhead. And you know, and my plan was to go out into the scene, you know, because I saw all these bands, and all of them like had one good member. Like, you know, I mean, that's not that. I take that back. They had one standout member, like
Mhm.
the master cylinder of the band, for
Yeah.
example, Doug Holland in Kraut. He was so, I mean, as great as this is, the drummer was, and the guitar and the bass player and the singer, they were all great. They all made those records great, but you could clearly see that Doug was the master cylinder of that band, and
Yeah.
Mackie was what appealed to me about Frontline, and so forth. And you know, and I looked at the Stimulators, and to me, the guy in the Stimulators was Nick Martin, the bass player,
Hmm.
the guy I wanted to steal. Even though I played bass, I had my sights set on him, and my plan was to go into the scene and poach, try to appeal to people with my music to start a new band,
Yeah.
but made up of all the best people. Because, like I said, there wasn't this great pool of talent. All the people that I knew of were already in bands, so I wanted to poach these people, and
Hmm.
that's that. You know, that's what I did. I
Yeah.
mean, but the very valuable thing about it was the first person I poached was Harley, which gave me a lot of leverage to poach other people because he was famous on the scene. And Harley came from the punk band on the scene. The Stimulators were like, they were basically New York City's answer to the Sex Pistols. The singer did Johnny Rotten's act.
Yeah.
They certainly had their own style, but it was definitely punk. They were a punk rock band from Axis, Kansas City. So when I started playing with Harley, I guess there was a certain connotation, because he was the drummer from the hot punk band in town. But I was certainly never a punk. I never being anything like that, like straight edge, skinhead, all those kinds of things. I enjoyed observing them, but I was never one of them. I'm not like much of a joiner,
Yeah.
so I never the whole punk ethic. Also, to me, by the time I was writing and making songs, punk was over. Sex Pistols had been broken up. You know, it already whatever punk was, it already turned into new wave and was popular on the radio.
Yeah.
So I felt no kinship to punk. And so and my friend Paul Dordell, who I mentioned earlier, who came up with the title World Peace Can't Be Done, who also wrote two Murphy's Law songs, California Pipeline and Skinhead Rebel. Those were songs that we played in our band before I was in the Cro-Mags. And when we stopped playing together, Paul just gave those songs to Murphy's Law. But going back to this thing was at some point, uh, Paul was one of the original members of the Cro-Mags too, even though I would actually like to say he was one of the original members of the band that we were starting, because we didn't call it
Yeah.
Cro-Mags for years. When Paul was in the band, we were called the Bald Eagles. And it
Bald
was
Eagles.
me, Harley, and Paul. And and in that short period of time, a couple of days, when Paul and me and Harley first started playing together and we were jamming and stuff, and I was showing them my riffs, Paul's like, so what kind of music, what are we going to be called? Are we going to be called, are we going to call it punk, or are we going to call it hardcore? And I was like, hardcore? All I could think of was porn.
Yeah.
That word hardcore was a film. There was even a movie out with George C. Scott not too long before that called Hardcore.
That's right. Yeah.
Immediately I was like, I got this. I made that face. And I was like, well, I tell you one thing. What in the neighborhood that I grew up in the Bronx, the very worst thing you could be called was a punk. So when I first started hearing about punk rock, I was like, I don't get this at all. Like, why would you want to be called punk? I mean, obviously it took on some other connotation, but it was something that didn't appeal to me at all.
Yeah.
So when Paul started saying hardcore, he was the first person in New York that I heard use that phrase. And Paul was a very influential guy on the scene, and he was palling up with Harley. So everybody else started using that term.
Hmm.
Eventually took over, because to us, we had our own voice. We weren't the Sex Pistols. We weren't some British phenomenon happening because of the working class and the Queen and all that kind of stuff. We were
Right.
street from New York, and we had our own voice, and this was us.
Yeah.
So the idea of using this term, even though it came from another city, uh, was our way of stepping away from the punk moniker, which to me made perfect sense. And again, I didn't really embrace it or anything. I just preferred it, because to me we were just what we were doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there was some vote on the scene, like let's call it this. It was something that happened slowly just by rejecting this thing. And the
Yeah.
funny thing to me is, like, now that's very hard to see, because you always hear people say hardcore punk, hardcore punk, hardcore punk. But that was something nobody ever said back then. Nobody in New York, I never once in my life heard anybody say hardcore punk. It was either punk or hardcore. This whole hardcore punk, putting those two words together, happened after Green Day. When Green Day had this massive commercial success, and all these hardcore bands wanted to slip in and jump on that coattail. And then also started hearing people say hardcore, and of course the labels jumped on it too, because they wanted to get some of that Green Day. And of course people started changing even their styles, reverting more to a punk style. But using that term hardcore punk, I never heard that. And all of a sudden when it started popping up again, I was like, what the hell is this? Why are these two being merged together? And of course, now it's way out of anybody's control to claim that it's incorrect. Like, I would never sit here and say hardcore punk, using the expression hardcore punk, is incorrect, because today it is correct, because it's become a thing, because the internet gives the voice to the masses, and mob rules. If mob believes that hardcore punk is a thing, it is. And that's the end of that conversation.
Fair enough. Yeah, I hear you, man.
Like if somebody asked me like, is are Aggros a hardcore punk band? I would say absolutely. It's got nothing to do with punk. Of
But so you would say it's hardcore though.
course it is. The bones are hardcore.
Okay.
Music that I make and have made is definitively hardcore.
Hmm.
And if I take the bones of what I created in the 80s and play it today, it would certainly be hardcore. Definitively. Uh,
Cool.
the bones of it, maybe certainly I dress up those bones in different clothes and a different hat
Well, yeah.
than
Yeah.
maybe I would have done in 86. But the bones of it are, me writing songs on the bass a lot of the time, that's my bass right there.
Hmm.
Fender P and my BC Rich.
Yeah.
I write a lot on the piano. Melodies and
Yeah.
because if I transpose my guitar riffs to the piano and I play them, just the physicality of the way your hands rest on the guitar or on the piano, you find yourself playing the same things a lot on the guitar. You
Hmm.
you you already have solutions in your head. Oh, that worked before. I'll try that, but in a little different way. And you find yourself getting very samey. Age of Quarrel is that way, because I was very new, like to writing songs. So when I wrote Signs of the Times and World Peace and the parts in By Myself, you know, you could actually string all those three songs together and it would be seamless. But
Interesting. Yeah.
basically me just sitting in my mom's kitchen, like playing as hard as I can, trying to make them a little different. And then they got split into other songs and Street Justice as well. Daddy,
Yeah.
and then you can play World Peace. These are the signs of the time. It's like you can
Yeah.
play all this. Harley even joked at one point that we should call the album Cro-Mags in E.
Yeah. That's good, actually, man.
It was one of the many goofy jokes.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
couldn't.
but going back to the Aggros,
Yeah.
I pick up my guitar and I write a song. I don't think to myself I'm going to write a hardcore song. I never did that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
didn't do
yeah.
that when I wrote World Peace, and I don't do that now. But what I do is I follow my instincts, and I definitely have a definitive style.
Mm.
You hear World Peace. If you put World Peace side by side with Chaos Magic from the first Aggros album, it's so clearly written by the same person.
Yeah. Well,
All,
yeah. Yeah. For
all the
sure.
strumming, all the right hand rhythm, the way I play rhythms
Yeah.
dictates what the drums will be. Like my right hand plays the bass and the snare drum.
And your tone is very distinctive too. Your guitar tone.
Tone is tone, but I'm talking about the bones of us
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
song and songwriting.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you say that about the tone, and it's so funny to me when I released Chaos Magic. There was like I could see the look on people's faces, like, oh yes, this is what I'm missing. Like this is what the Cro-Mags haven't been. And I was like, well, of
Mhm.
course the Cro-Mags haven't been that because I wrote those songs. But the funny other thing was, so many people were like, "Oh my God, that BC Rich sound, that is unmistakable. You playing that BC Rich on Chaos Magic is, man, that's it." And I was like, "Well, I played a G&L on that song." And the point of that is the sound, is in your hands.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And their song, like, and I've been known, I've told many stories about recording and how I recorded and how I always used that guitar and a Marshall on every Cro-Mags album, and the sound was very specific. And then when I did the Aggros album, I mean, I recorded one of the songs on a little Fender practice amp with a
Mhm.
Les Paul. And everybody again said, "Oh my God, that BC Rich sounds so fucking awesome, man. That's it." And I'm like, okay. And it also goes back to this, the great story, which is lore now, which is Van Halen and Ted Nugent were playing a show together, and it was sound check time, and Van Halen just finished sound checking, and Ted just walked up onto the stage after they were gone, while Eddie's guitar was still set up,
Mhm.
and the guitar tech was standing there, and he's like, "It's Ted Nugent. What do I do?" And Ted was like, "Hey, can I play Eddie's guitar?" Because this was when Eddie was like a phenomenon. Like
Mhm.
nobody understood what was going on. Like, what is this? What is this
Yeah.
thing he does? It must be the guitar. So Ted Nugent was like, "Can I try his guitar?" see if some of that magic is in the guitar. And this is the guitar tech telling this story to Eddie Van Halen.
Mm,
Eddie Van Halen's like, so what did Ted sound like playing on my guitar? And the guitar tech said, he sounded like Ted Nugent.
mm,
And that's it.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, again, going back to the Aggros, when I write songs, there's definitely a stylistic uh, diversity on the record because in the decades since I made a record and I was working in the film business and not applying myself to actually playing music, I mean, that guitar was in storage for 10 years of those years where I
Yeah.
didn't even play at all. But I had a lot of time to think about music, to
Mm,
assess what music can be and should be. Hearing new bands like Alice in Chains over the years, or System of a Down, or Slipknot, and being like, "Oh, that's what it can be. Oh, wow, that's new," or "That's just like these guys, but in a different way." Then you just assemble all these component parts that you think you to yourself, if I was making music again, I would do that,
mm,
incorporate these component parts. All the years of listening to Yes and loving the church organ. There's church organ all over the first Aggros album, and
mm,
just plain piano. Which all my engineers were like, let's get a B3 sound. I was like, no, I want it to sound like a piano. I want clarity. I want melody,
mm,
and still super heavy. And we surprised ourselves, just incorporating all these component things, certain kinds of, I never used a wah-wah in my life
mm.
until this album. And I used a little Fender amp, and I used, a variety of guitars. I only used the BC Rich on one song, City Kids.
Oh,
And it was just one of those, we were just there one day and I just wanted a little nastier, heavier sound. And I hadn't played that guitar in a long time, and I brought it in and I just started laying down tracks, and it was like, oh my God, how come I didn't play this the whole time?
wow. What kind of pickups do you have in the BC Rich?
They're stock
Oh,
DiMarzio.
okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. That's cool.
Same ones from the day I bought it in 1981.
Wow, you didn't change anything on it.
No, that's not true. The bridge is different. It's just a new bridge. It's the same exact bridge.
Uh-huh.
And I changed the tuning pegs almost immediately. They're Spurzels because the stock tuning pegs on BC Rich were garbage and they wouldn't stay in tune. That's
Yeah.
like also part of the story I always tell about when I bought my first BC Rich and I brought it back to the store to return it and they wouldn't take it. And I threatened to smash all the guitars in the store if they didn't trade it in. It was because it wouldn't stay in tune. And the
Yeah.
reason it wouldn't stay in tune, I found out subsequently, was the tuning pegs. But it still didn't stop them from giving me this. This was my second choice. I had a wood grain one. That
Oh,
was
okay.
my second choice. I walked out like in a rush, like, okay, I got a different guitar that maybe this won't stay in tune.
Yeah.
Somebody told me right away, try these Spurzels, and I had them installed, and the tuning has been perfect ever since.
Nice.
But yes, Aggros, despite all the component parts of music that I found desirable over the past few decades,
Mm,
that now I'm able to incorporate without any obstacles or discussion. It's just like whimsically, oh, I want this song to have a church organ. I want this song to have a B3. I want this song to have a piano. I'm going to record acoustic guitar. I'm going to record an entirely acoustic and piano song.
mm,
Uh, you know, the bass, the mixes, even the way I mix stuff, people are, stylistically in metal, particularly, the bass is like a non-existent thing. But you listen to the Aggros record and the bass plays a starring role in it. And that's because I, from the production side, made room for it. I
yeah.
recorded with it in mind. I recorded with it being a lead instrument in certain parts, as being instrumental music. The guitar plays a lead role, the bass plays a lead role, the drums, the piano, they have a conversation. And the only way to do that if they are clear and understandable. And I had so many arguments with my engineers, like, I want you to pan the bass all the way to the right just during this bass fill. And they look at me like, that's ridiculous. Nobody's ever, no. And I was like, well, of course people have done it. I was like the Dixie Dregs. There's a song called Odyssey where
Uh,
they're all doing these solos, like the bass and the fiddle and the guitar. And every time a solo happens, it's panned hard.
oh, nice.
It's almost like a voice speaking in your ears.
Yeah.
It's a completely obscure song, but it worked.
Uh,
And it's not that unusual. Van Halen did that. You'd hear a guitar solo just like sitting in your right ear. like not notorious, but famous for their mixes. Like if you listen to Van Halen with headphones, it's
Mm,
bizarre. Like to hear just the bass in one ear and just hear the guitar in another ear and the drums down the middle and those things panning sometimes. It's just, it's very isolated. And
yeah,
people in metal, people don't do that. They build this wall of Metallica guitars. They're taught by Metallica that you don't have to hear the bass.
yeah,
But I mean, especially on my new album, when you hear my new album, it's like the bass, we would have these conversations where we would be mixing and I would say, as soon as the chorus starts, I want the guitars to come down like almost a third and the bass to go up a third. He's like, that's going to be so obvious. And I was like, gotta hear it. I need to be able to hear the bass. And then ultimately the way, Georgios, my engineer, he's
mm,
great engineer. He managed to take what I demanded we do and blend it with uh, solutions,
mm,
fading and like not making it abrupt, and then switching it to the other side, so like it didn't suddenly weigh on this side, and then you balance it out on that side. This album will be a pleasure to listen to in headphones.
nice. Yeah, that's cool.
And all this is from the question about punk. Like I love the Sex Pistols. If
Yeah.
I hear the word punk, all I think of is the Sex Pistols and the Dead Boys.
What about the
Everybody
Ramones?
thinks the Ramones, but to the Ramones, I never liked the Ramones. To me, they're like a
No.
pop band that
Yeah.
plays like beach music. I don't. And I reject it because I don't get any value from it.
Mm,
So I reject it from that, what I think is a British phenomenon, even though I love the Dead Boys. To me, the Dead Boys and the Sex Pistols are the two punk bands.
okay.
People always say the Clash, but the Clash is, I know the Clash from Rock the Casbah, which is an awesome song.
Yeah, true.
But to me, it's like that's a pop song from the radio.
Yeah.
The disco era. Oh, fucking great song, great lyrics, very
Yeah.
prophetic.
Yeah. It is a disco song. Yeah, the Clash had a few disco songs actually, but
And everybody can argue this, and I don't want to argue with anybody. I don't care about it enough. I don't like the Clash. I don't like the Ramones. I don't care about it. To
yeah,
me,
well,
they're
no, yeah, I hear you.
like arguing about like, Aha or something. It's not. They're not on my radar. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I say I like punk, I mean the Sex Pistols. That's
Yeah.
all. I don't mean the Dead Kennedys. The Dead Kennedys are not a punk band. They're a hardcore band, in my estimation, or at least for what I value. But none of that matters now because the lines are so blurred and have
Yeah.
been hijacked by the internet and public opinion, ignorant public opinion.
Yeah.
And that's not a negative thing. Ignorant just means you don't know.
True. True. I hear you. You're right. I got one last question for you, man, and then I'll let you go. What's your favorite metal bar in New York City, and why is it Lucky 13 Saloon?
Well, of course, it's Lucky 13. Uh, I love it because it's authentic,
Yeah.
genuine. It's owned by genuine, authentic metal heads who also enjoy hardcore music and punk and heavy music of all kinds.
Yeah.
And they like to, Jeff and Melody are lovely, uh, real New Yorkers, and they opened up a great place, and they cater to what they like and not what they think will fill the room. And fortunately, what they like fills the room.
Yeah.
Such
Nice.
a cool place, it doesn't feel the place doesn't feel curated. It just
Yeah.
feels lived in. You go to
Yeah.
some metal bars in town, and it feels like you're like going into like a museum that was curated to
Mhm.
look a certain way. Like there's no space on the wall for new stuff. Like the
Yeah.
place has got to grow, it's ever growing and change out. But if things are nailed to the wall with like an inch of space between everything, and you feel like, it's like, wow. I think it was like this when they opened the doors. But
Mhm.
people, there's a couple other places. Like I go to Gold Sounds,
Mhm.
which is in a completely different neighborhood. It's like in the hipster
Yeah.
Bushwick, but they have live shows in the back. It's very much like a much smaller version of Lucky 13.
Mhm.
Uh, Lovely people run that too. Real fans, and it's not curated. And
Yeah.
I love going there. And I go to the Broadway, which is more like a hipster bar, but it's in my neighborhood, and they play Susie and the Banshees and stuff like that.
That's cool.
I think it's like Susie and the Banshees. Are they punk rock? If they
I
are,
mean, they started off kind of punk, and then
if
they
they
kind of
are, I don't get it. The Sex Pistols and Susie and the Banshees. I don't know. I love Susie and the Banshees, but
right, right, yeah. Well, I mean, okay, were the Bad Brains punk or hardcore?
well, they were clearly influenced by the Sex Pistols. Like
Yeah, and the Dead Boys too.
HR did Johnny Rotten's act.
Yes, he did. You're right.
Starting off, he was 100%, and I liked him better when he was doing HR's act. Uh, and they were definitely 100% influenced it. It's hard to see because when you look at them, you see black men, and you see black men of a certain kind, especially later on where they were part of the religion being Rastafari. It's hard to make that connection. But earlier on, when they were like wearing suits and skinny ties,
Yeah.
you can see they were, almost new wave, which is even weirder. But and I remember seeing the Bad Brains the first time, like going up the stairs of Max's Kansas City, and like there was this plaque like you'd see in a cafeteria with stick-on letters, like plastic letters, like that stuck in,
Yeah.
and it's Stimulators with a Z and Bad Brains with a Z, like with a big Z, like even all the letters were different sizes.
Mhm.
Walking up the steps of Max's Kansas City was like creaking steps you thought were going to collapse, and the railing you didn't want to hold on too hard.
Yeah.
Get to the top and there's a sign, and you turn and look in, and it's so dark. There's like no lights in the place. It was like, for a 14-year-old kid, it was terrifying,
Yeah.
exhilarating.
Yeah.
And then walking in the door at Max's, and like, they're playing Motorhead. They're playing that crazy band with the Mexican guys. Like for a long time, I thought Motorhead were Mexicans.
Yeah, yeah. Because I used to
Because of the cover of Ace of Spades. I was like, it's those crazy Mexican guys. Awesome. I didn't know anybody knew who these guys were.
Yeah.
I was so happy to hear that. And then,
Yeah.
the Stimulators, at that time, there would be two bands and they would play two sets.
Mhm.
One would come out and they play a set, and the next band would play a set, and and so forth. So
Yeah.
that night, the Stimulators came out and they were playing their first set. I guess the Bad Brains had already played the first set. I guess I got in there late. And then after the Stimulators play, and the Stimulators gave me exactly what I expected and wanted, because I was a new Sex Pistols fan. I was really fired up about hearing them. Like some kids at school had lent me the record, and I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And it's heavy. Music wasn't heavy anymore. This was really fucking heavy, and I loved it.
Mhm.
And so I go up there and I see the Stimulators, and they gave me exactly what I wanted. They were like a punk rock band. Singer was doing Johnny Rotten's act. I was like, that's cool. This is what I wanted. And then the Bad Brains walked out on stage, and I was like, what's going on? Like, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Like, they weren't like in colorful clothes. They weren't like wearing the punk rock pants that you got at the punk rock store. They didn't have spiked hair.
Yeah.
They were black. They didn't really have the dreads yet. They had like nubs, I think.
Mhm.
And they just started playing, and it was just frenzy. It was very different than the Stimulators, because the Stimulators were really a punk rock band. They played like these rock songs that were like
Yeah.
mid, and the Bad Brains just came out in a flurry, and it was just crazy. I definitely think that the Bad Brains were, even though they were, influenced by punk, they became a hardcore band. They became one of the premier hardcore bands. When
Yeah.
I think of hardcore, I think of Black Flag Damaged. The Damaged album is the greatest hardcore album ever made, in my opinion,
Mhm.
by miles. It's just like, it is so raw, so amazing. And Circle Jerks, Group
Mhm.
Sex, Dead Kennedys, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, Minor Threat, Bad Brains, and Crumbsuckers. Crumbsuckers are one of my favorite. The Life of Dreams album is just
Okay.
and those guys, have no connection to punk.
No, not yeah, I know. Yeah, you can tell for sure. Yeah, yeah.
They came in to the hardcore scene from a different angle. Like most
Yeah.
most of us, like I can even say us, because the Sex Pistols played a big role between pulling my brain away from Rush and Kiss and Led Zeppelin and Yes, and driving it towards Motorhead. Because I heard Motorhead and the Sex Pistols right around this. I was a latecomer to the Sex Pistols, but
Mhm.
I heard the Sex Pistols in '79 and Motorhead right around that time, or a little bit later. And those two bands showed me that you didn't have to be these guys. You'd have to be these gods
Yeah.
that came down off Mount Olympus, or Steve Howe, wearing a cape. Like, oh my God, the guy in Yes wears a cape. Fuck, these guys. You know what I mean? I don't wear a cape.
He's not fucking around, man. He's got it. Yeah, yeah,
So I got totally steered away from that
yeah.
just by the accessibility of the Sex Pistols and Motorhead. I was like, I could do that. I
Yeah.
mean, which is, very ambitious and, thing to think that you can compose within such a tight context of those three, that simplicity.
Yeah.
Motorhead was very stylistic, and I totally jumped on, like, the way I play guitar and the way I play the way I play bass, both are more influenced by Lemmy than they are by Steve Howe. Even though even though both play a role, because stylistically, rhythmically, even the way my aggro songs are more a direct imprint of Lemmy than they are of Chris Squire. Even though you could definitely hear a lot of Chris Squire in the bass playing on the Aggros album.
Uh-huh.
So
Well,
yeah, punk or hardcore. If I identify with anything, I'm a hardcore kid from New York City, from the street of New York City. I'm a New York hardcore kid,
fuck yeah. Hell yeah.
just like I'm a Bronx kid.
Mhm.
It's imprinted on me and my personality. It's part of why I make the music that I make, despite all the bells and whistles that I incorporated from other things. You
Mhm.
know, I think I don't remember where I said it before, but people said, "Are you a hardcore band?" And I go, "Absolutely, 100%." But I hope that we are much more than that.
Yes. That's awesome, man. Fuck yeah. I think that's a good place to leave it right there, man. Fuck yeah. That's awesome. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you
Well,
taking this
if you're
time.
watching this and you want to know, go to youtube.com/the Aggros, Aggros, and subscribe. It's free. It helps the band.
Yeah.
Booking agents look at analytics. They don't listen to records.
Yeah.
They don't talk to people. They look at analytics, and it'll be more likely that I'll get booked if I have more subscribers. So do that. I'm not
I'm gonna
on any
put
streaming services.
I'll put a
So
link to on in the description to this too, man.
I'm not on any streaming services. So if you want to get the record, you can go to Bandcamp, the Aggros at .bandcamp.com, and or my website, which is aggros.nyc. And you can in the United States, you can get the album, CD, or merch on that. Or if you're in Europe, it's much easier and cheaper to get it on Bandcamp because I have someone in Germany delivering, sending out the records.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Cool, man. Well, look forward to the
Yeah,
new record.
DI. If there's any association I have with punk is that I'm DIY all the way 100%. So I write everything, I produce everything, I produce the record, I manufacture the record. I'm my own label, and I'm not on any streaming services, and I'm just doing it myself for the
Yeah.
love of music.
Nice. That's awesome, man. All right, cool. I will let you know. This will be up probably next week, actually, man. And I'll let you know. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me, man.
My pleasure.
And you have a good one out there. Looking forward to that new record.
Thank you. Me too.
All right, man. See you later.